Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11 to 12. So then, remember that at one time you were Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision, by those called the circumcision, which is done in the flesh by human hands. And that time you were without Christ, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and foreigners of the covenants of promise, without hope and without God in the world. So the first verse we look at, or the first word we look at, is this right here, where it talks about Gentiles. This was a time where it was Gentiles, anybody who wasn't Jewish, versus Jews. And what God says is, so then remember, you were Gentiles, and there was a conflict between Gentiles and Jews, and there was frustrations there. What God says is, hey, if you've been reconciled to me, you can be reconciled to every single person around you. And there's even a verse that talks about us having the ministry of reconciliation. The Bible says that at one time we were at war with God, and yet God made peace. And that's our job as believers. It's convicting to me now that's our job as believers, that we are supposed to be ministers of reconciliation, bridging those gaps. The other piece is this, where it talks about being without Christ. It says, hey, you were without Christ. But they weren't neutral. Remember, these are very spiritually active people, probably even more so than most believers now. It's not like they were just neutral, floating out there without Jesus. Remember, they were worshiping spiritual beings, supernatural beings. They were involved in ceremonies and seances and all those supernatural type of experiences. They were without Christ, but they weren't neutral. They were spiritually active. But there's a problem, and it comes with this. It says, hey, you were excluded from that, and there was a problem. But this piece here where it says, hey, there was a promise that you're missing out on. And that's where God says, hey, I will reveal myself to those people who are in Christ, those who have a relationship with Jesus. And as a result of what they were worshiping and how they were worshiping, they were missing out on those promises, the power and the blessing of God's promises. And as a result, they were without hope. It's a horrible place to be in, being without hope. They were without hope daily. They were in fear of their gods, in fear that they were not good enough or earning their salvation or their peace or their future rest. Said, man, we are completely without hope daily, but then also at death. If you look at Greek and Roman literature at the time of the New Testament, there was a lot of fear there. There was zero hope. It was all torment. It was all torture, trying to appease the gods and realizing that it's impossible to do that. They were without hope. And the other piece is this, without God in the world. That's one of the greatest things we have about God, is that he's involved in our day-to-day life. He cares. He's aware. He's close, and he's personal. Every single thing that you go through, God is aware of. He wants good things for you. He cares about you. He thinks about you. And you have hope and realize that God is a part of your day-to-day life. But this other piece here, where it talks about Gentiles being at war, even just relationally with other people, and the ministry of reconciliation we have between us and God, but also between us. Is there anyone we need to be reconciled with? And there's another verse that talks about, as much as depends on you, live at peace with everyone else. Sometimes it's impossible to live at peace with other people, but we realize there's some things that should be said. And what if we were to practice this ministry of reconciliation? Remember that one time we were afar off from God, but yet he moved close to us so that we could have that relationship with him.